Hello, everybody. Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks, a podcast that truly hopes you find someone to love. It's Sif Pop. Welcome to Sif Pop Weekly, streaming live most Saturday mornings, are available to download later in your podcast feed, unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks.
Patrons get those perks.
Woo!
I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and he doesn't have a short fuse. You just don't know when you lit it. It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen.
Ahoy!
Each week we'll chat about movies, TV, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. What's on your mind, Andrew Ormsby?
Me and my Lex Luthor looking mind.
Yeah. I think it's the first time I've ever seen you with a clean-shaven face in the history of our friendship.
I know, that spans what? We've known each other 8-9 years now? Something like that?
Yeah.
That's a long time to have facial hair and not knowing what a man's chin looks like. Well, I guess you knew my chin. I had the mustache when we first met, but
that's true. Yeah, just not the naked face.
Exactly.
Momentous part of our relationship. You have shown me your naked face. So it is one of those things, man. You get used to what somebody looks like one way, and then this is the privilege of watching this show as it broadcasts live. You get to see what our beautiful faces look like, and now you get to see what Andrew's full beautiful face looks like, at least for this week. By next week it'll probably be growing out again, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's coming back. The beard is, but no, it's a lost cause up top.
Nice. I'm excited today. We have got a couple movies to review, of course, and then a best ever challenge about Jamie Lee Curtis, and of course some buried treasure as well. Lots to get to, so let's get into it. Let's start with our review of Hollywood Ends.
Hollywood Ends.
Did I say Hollywood?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little Freudian slip there.
Well, no, honestly, I thought it was like, this is the end of Hollywood. Just so, I thought that's really what you were saying. Like, okay, Aaron, you don't have to give away what you thought of the movie so quickly. Let's take a look at Halloween Ends. 4 years after the events of Halloween in 2018, Laurie has decided to liberate herself from fear and rage and embrace life. But when a young man is accused of killing a boy he was babysitting, it ignites a cascade of violence and terror that will force Laurie to finally confront the evil she can't control once and for all. It is probably one of the worst movies we've ever seen. The previous Halloween movie. Wow.
Right? Don't you think Halloween? What was it? Halloween Kills was terrible. It was just
It
a
was one of the
terrible
worst
movie
movies ever. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a terrible movie all around. So I guess my question, Andrew, is where do you land on this one? Do you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay?
I didn't hate it as much as Halloween Kills, but I still hated it. It's yeah.
It's varying degrees of hate.
We say this every single time, but it's always good to preface for possibly new listeners. We hate this franchise and we hate horror films.
Well, I think it's a little more nuanced than that. I don't know that I hate this entire franchise. I've only recently kind of dug into the whole franchise. But I think it's at least safe to say that we are not fans of this type of horror film. Like this is,
the slasher.
Yeah, the slasher kind of thing is not necessarily our game to begin with. Add to that, poor movie making or whatever, and then it just becomes a process of trying not to sound like we're judging anybody who likes a movie that we clearly don't like.
But we also want to let you know where our headspace is.
Yeah, absolutely. My headspace is also in the hated it camp.
Yeah.
I don't know that I can see the varying degrees of these final two in this trilogy. I think the first one in this trilogy is better than both of these two, but these two to me just seem like I just watch them and I go, what are you thinking? Like, how did you, like, I don't even understand how this appeals to somebody who likes this series. Like, I have such a hard time finding my way into what it would be like to enjoy this movie. And the only thing I can find is if you enjoy gruesome kills, right? Like that's the only thing I end up coming to is just to be like, okay, if you're in it for the, oh my goodness, I can't believe I just saw that happen, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then
Shock
maybe
factor.
that's it, or a deep love of the character, like of the Michael Myers character. But even if that's you, this movie isn't necessarily for you.
No.
Like, so like it's just such a weird choice that this movie is making. I struggle to find good things to say. Andrew, do you have any good thing to say about Halloween Ends other than it ends?
I actually do. I think that Jamie Lee Curtis gives a pretty good performance. One that keeps you on your toes as to where her story will end. Not only physically, like I don't know about you, but going into something, I wonder if she's going to die with Michael, or if Michael will even die.
Right. Or what if Michael wins? What if Michael kills Jamie, and that's how Halloween ends?
Yeah. But
or Laurie, I should say. But
Laurie, yeah. But Laurie, I liked how I felt Jamie Lee Curtis was saying goodbye to the character. Like the character herself was trying to find some semblance of peace that she could have had before this franchise began. The character's normal life. Is it possible for a character like her to have a normal life? And if not, it's where will it lead? And this is probably the best I have seen to what Michael represents to her. I think that and by that I mean Michael has always been a monster, but what does he represent to her? I think that this is the first film, maybe since the first one, that's kind of struggled with this metaphorical walking darkness that can reside in people, and what does that mean for her? So yeah, kudos to the movie for finally trying to tackle that. It only took them 44 years. So
yeah,
but as far as pros, that's all I got.
Yeah, I don't know that I can even join you on that stuff. I thought the metaphorical stuff was all on the surface and forced, and the movie's trying to do something, I think, with the idea of how evil is, something that we almost bring on people sometimes through our own prejudice and expectations. There seems to be an overarching theme with where this movie seems to want to center its attention on the idea of how evil comes even to those who, weren't born with it, if that makes sense.
It's a very poorly made Joker movie.
Yeah, sure. Yes, exactly. It is that Joker feel. Yeah, exactly. So I thought all that was right there on the surface. Didn't really give me a chance to really think deeply about anything or really feel deeply about anything. So it's hard to join you there. Jamie Lee Curtis is Jamie Lee Curtis. She's great. I love her. I even think she suffers in this movie a few times, just from not having the proper amount of character work and character care done in both, I think, the script phase and the directing. And I think it harms her performance a little bit. And I don't blame her necessarily for that. I just think there are a couple moments where I'm like, oof, for everybody in this movie. Everybody in this movie has at least one scene where I'm like, I'm so sorry you had to, have this in your acting repertoire. It's just so terrible. Yeah. So because characters in this movie, and forgive me, but I'm already headlong into negatives because it's pretty much all I have.
No, go for it. Yeah, because I'm done talking pros.
Characters in this movie are just pieces of a story map. They are not active participants in their own decisions and in their own things that they are doing. Literally one of the major moments of the movie, and I won't spoil it here, but involves one of the characters just completely doing a 180, and we are never given a reason. We aren't shown any of the process of this character making a different decision. It's just like they were one person, and then something happened, and now they're another person, and they're back. And it's just like, well, but why? What? How? Help me feel something. Help me think about something. It takes its villain and sidelines its villain and in a really weird way, so that when we do get stuff from Michael Myers, it feels like, who cares?
It's a tertiary.
Yeah. It's very, very strange. It is a ridiculous film, and in none of the good ways, in my opinion.
In none of the good ways that I think the horror fans would appreciate.
Yeah.
Not just us. So
yeah.
The film spends so much time trying to build up the story of this new character that it forgets it's supposed to be wrapping up this 45-year franchise. Like, why are you introducing this new character and making him the primary focus of this story? He is not why we are here. It's so baffling. I think what the movie's trying to say is this darkness infectious? And that's not what your movie should be tackling now. You've had so many movies, and granted, you've said not all of them are canon. I'll go with that. But you've had so prolifically long of a story that this is not the time to be, tackling these issues. They should have been dealt with long beforehand, and now should be the resolution of, many character story arcs. And it's not. I think he was like, yeah, we could wrap up the story arcs, but it's still a slasher movie, so we got to have some quote unquote cool death scenes that I think they had nothing, and they make me feel nothing.
I think it stems. I could be completely wrong. This is all guesswork on my part.
You could be completely right too.
Could be as well. It does happen occasionally. My guess is that what we're seeing in this movie is an attempt to have a satisfying resolution to the Michael Myers saga, as well as introduce a possible new saga, a possible new lane that these movies can go through. I think it's, unless I'm misremembering, I think it's very possible that we have just shifted the possible villain of the franchise. It's just, I don't know. It's frustrating to me. I don't want to spoil too much. I think it started with a business decision, in my opinion, and then trying to go, okay, how do we make this movie that does both of these things? So, yeah.
It was definitely one of those things where you can definitely see that money was behind this decision making and not the the art, quote unquote.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, there was iconography that they tried to establish. There was, you could just really feel the movie laboring to say, yes, Halloween is ending, but is it? And I think that's unfortunate.
Yeah, again, there were too many scenes in this movie where I, as an audience member, was screaming at the TV, like, "Don't be stupid," and they were stupid studists, and
yeah.
Can't fix stupid in a horror movie.
Andrew, like, I know we don't like to labor on movies we hate, unless we're really passionate, and I don't feel passionate about this one enough to be like, really dig into it, because I don't think it's as bad as it is. I don't think it's one of those movies that is missing the mark in a way that is obnoxious or painful. I think it just misses the mark in a way that just misses the mark. So for me,
the movie has no heart. Michael, cut it out.
Yeah. Yes.
There's no post-credit scene. It truly ends.
Yeah. Halloween ends, and so does this review.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I would end up by saying this. If you like the Halloween franchise and you're going to watch every Halloween movie, obviously you're going to watch this. I would be curious to know who it is that loves this movie, and why. What about, because it's hard for me even to see like horror fans or fans of the franchise loving this movie. And I'd be curious if there's someone who really, really enjoys something like this and what that reason is. But yeah, I can't find it. So we will move on. That is Halloween Ends. It is, by the way, both in theaters and on Peacock. Available on Peacock to stream. So if you already have Peacock, you don't have to spend money on it.
There you go.
All right, let's head into our next review. This is on Apple TV Plus. Let's talk about the greatest beer run ever. Chicky wants to support his friends fighting in Vietnam, so he does something wild. Personally bring them American beer. What starts as a well-meaning journey quickly changes Chicky's life and perspective. This is based on a true story. Zac Efron playing Chicky. You've got Russell Crowe in here as a reporter. Bill Murray shows up for a chicken sandwich.
Yeah, he's picking up his lunch money.
As the Colonel, who's a bartender. So yeah, it's a Vietnam War story, but a different kind of one than you've probably seen before. What did you think, Andrew? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay?
Oh, Aaron, how the pendulum of film review swings this week, because I think I'm going to go with I love this one.
Loved it. Very, very nice.
Low side, I loved it, but yeah, I can definitely say I love this one.
Yeah, I'm straight in the middle of liked it. I really enjoyed this movie. It definitely has some negatives that we will get to eventually. But Andrew, as you have tiptoed into the loved it tulips, what are some of the things you loved about it?
I love the fact that from the get-go, this movie establishes the type of friendship all these guys have, and I think it does a really good job, because you need that in a movie like this where it's going to be an American tale, I guess, where you have a guy going to not save his friends. There's so many stories. And here's another thing. It would be difficult to believe if this was if this wasn't a true story, that this would be something somebody would come up with as like a movie. But the fact that this really happened is insane. And I think I heard about this story like back whenever I was working at the hospital. I think somebody told me like they were reading this biography, and I'm like, that's weird. And they're like, no, this really happened. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so unbelievable that is something that really happened. But I love this dynamic that he has. There's a lot of heart in this movie of, he's not going to save them, but he's going to let these guys know that they haven't been forgotten.
Right. That they're appreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just the basic plot, as mentioned, is he's going to take a beer to all his friends in Vietnam, and just that idea is so audacious, and the fact that he tries to do it, and what happens as he is trying to get to each of his friends in the war, allows it to be even more than just kind of this silly story. It becomes even more of a journey into his understanding of war and politics and different things like that. And he becomes kind of a stand-in for the country in many ways through Vietnam, and kind of the way the country shifted from, the idea that this war was just and needed, to like, what are we actually doing here? Like, what's going on? Why are you lying to us? Like, all those things. And his character kind of goes through that journey in this movie, I think, in a pretty authentic and powerful way. I really enjoyed that. So it's there are some scenes in this. Some of my favorite scenes are the scenes where his casualness about his friends going to war is confronted with the reality of war. There's a scene where he hides from somebody.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
It may be the best scene in the movie for me. Because there's just a real like awakening moment for him that I think is it's one of those things where anytime I start to think about war, or I start to think about the military or those kind of things, I am very quick to remind myself that no matter what side I fall on, and I think I've said on this podcast many times, I'm a pacifist, and so you can extrapolate that to my views on many different things. But it is one of those things where I remind myself, if I don't sit in somebody's foxhole, if I don't walk in somebody's boots, it really is not something for me to completely understand. And that is important for me. That humility of being able to say, yes, I have opinions on things, but my opinions and the way I handle things are based on conjecture in many ways, because I haven't lived something, and that the people who have lived it are the best to tell you the story of what those things mean. And that goes for many, many areas, not just soldiers at war.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that point came through really well, and I really enjoyed that about this movie. It's one of my favorite things about the movie. Very
good. Totally agree. 100%.
Yeah.
I like Zac Efron in this one. I think that he does a really good job. It's very subtle, but I love the idea of this is how somebody in the late 60s, early 70s, he kind of has that old-timey way about him in this movie, like the way he carries himself, the way he talks. By the way, one of my cons, I'll just throw this out there right now. Boston is not New York. Everybody in this movie has a thick Boston accents, but they're supposed to be from New York. It's.
I got that. I was weirded out by that, actually. I was trying to figure that out. Because I knew they were in New York, but it was very clearly a crew of Boston people. So I just didn't know if they were all like Boston transplants, or what the deal was. It was very strange. Maybe I missed something. Maybe they did come from Boston, but they were in Jersey. I don't know.
I'll have to check, but it was not a New York accent, and that is coming from somebody who has only seen New York from Canada.
Yeah.
I was at Niagara Falls and like, hey, look over there, that's New York. And I'm like, okay, so there we go. But the set pieces, like the actual design, like going from, New York to Saigon to Landing Zone Z or whatever, I forget what it was called. But like, there's this range of beautiful scenery that we're getting in this movie. I think it's a very beautifully shot movie. Specifically the scene that we were just talking about, where he's hiding and then he's going back and forth between the foxholes and stuff, the way that's panned. It's a very beautifully shot movie.
Yeah.
It captures, it does a good enough job of capturing the terrors of war, but there's still, even through this entire movie, that firm grasp on wholesomeness.
Mm-hmm.
It still feels like a beautiful movie, even when you're seeing terrible things, because you realize that, okay, yeah, this is horrible, but it's leading to this character's growth and this character's understanding of what this is like. I truly, truly love this movie. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's probably top 10 of the year.
I will comment a little bit on the performances. I think Russell Crowe was probably my favorite performance. I'm really kind of liking this stage of his career and kind of some of the stuff he's choosing to do. I really thought the journalist aspect of this was handled really well. Zach's performance was good. It did take me out of it a couple of times. But I couldn't tell if it was just because I know that's not how Zac Efron talks and it was weird to me, or but I didn't fall completely into his performance. The Bill Murray thing was interesting. He was that accent didn't sit well on him for me, and so I was having a hard time with that. But overall, I think the performances did what they needed to do to bring me along the story. So that's all you can really ask.
Yeah. He has so many people in his life with varying degrees of opinions on the war, from his parents to his sister to his friends to Bill Murray. Well, I guess Bill Murray's his friend, but I don't think it's. And I love the fact that he was able to struggle with all of their opinions on the war. I don't think he was always firmly pro-war. He was pro-soldiers. And I think that he came to understand that maybe what they're fighting for isn't, all that it's been glorified to be. Because it says in the movie, he was in the military, but he never served. And and I love that aspect of the movie too, of him having an understanding of the military, but not what a war is like. And I think that really feeds into his what would you call his total misunderstanding of what it's like. But he's going in with this preconceived notion, and that adds to his wholesomeness. Because whenever he's like, say, "Oh yeah, I'm a tourist," and he really like keeps using that over and over again, and he's like, he never technically lies. He just omits the truth.
Well, that brings me to one of my other things I loved about this movie is it's funny, and Peter Farrelly directed this, and of course, the Farrelly brothers from some comedies. You can tell he's got a good sense of humor and he understands what he's doing. That CIA stuff is some of the funniest stuff in the movie.
Oh yeah.
And I really enjoy it. I will say that leads me into one of my cons.
Okay.
Which is that when this movie deals with the serious stuff, sometimes it's so close to the whoa, funny, look at what's going on kind of stuff, that it's a little bit off-putting. And maybe that's intentional, and I'm not going to take a ton of points off it. Like I said, I really like this movie. But there is one scene in particular where, I guess there are a couple, actually. There are a couple scenes where it's like, oh, like really like life, death, serious stuff.
Yeah.
And it's sandwiched in this more lighthearted tale of a guy bringing beer to his buddies in a way that is a bit distracting for me. It almost works, and maybe it works for others, but there were times where I was like, getting a little whiplash here.
Understandable. Totally understandable. Because I have those feelings too. Like I would say there's a scene with a centipede, which that part in itself is kind of funny, but the scene is so tense and like terrifying. And then there's another scene later in Saigon, and that whole sequence was really just heartbreaking and eye-opening for both the character and the viewers. That it does make you forget what the movie is about. But again, I'm going to go back to, I think this movie is, the premise of it, if it wasn't based on a true story, would be so ridiculous nobody could buy into it. So I think it is difficult to have to constantly remind yourself, this happened. So I can feel these emotions that it's trying to convey, and they can feel genuine because it's supposed to be genuine.
Yeah. It really is this beautiful journey of a guy who's like, hey, my buddies are doing a job and I'm going to go get them a beer, like that kind of thing. And that turning into, oh, they're not doing a job. They are in hell, and just really like that change of understanding of, yeah, you want to go give your buddies a beer because you want them to know they haven't been forgotten and they're appreciated, but the beer ain't going to do it. And what would do it? And is there an answer? And I really like that the movie was willing to go there and explore those things. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that if he hadn't played it off, and I mean, the actual Chicky person, if that's it represented in this movie, if he hadn't, like the scene we're talking about where he's hiding, if he would have, played that differently, it could have been a very emotional moment with the same action, of him giving his friend a beer. But if it was more genuine and heartfelt as opposed to surprise, buddy, like I'm here to make you smile, right. I think it could have meant a lot more. But I don't think, again, to the movie's benefit, in my mind, it's he just didn't know what he was getting himself into. Makes for a compelling movie.
Yeah, that's the greatest beer run ever. Any final thoughts, Andrew?
No post-credit scene.
No post-credit scene on this one. I just can't believe I'm not a beer drinker, but I can't believe that beer would be good, warm and sloshed.
But it's American beer. Some Pabst Blue.
I recommend it. Check it out if you have Apple TV Plus, especially. Throw it on. I think you're going to have a good time. So that is the greatest beer run ever on Apple TV Plus. Before we head into the best ever challenge, a thank you to our Sif Pop members. You are amazing. We love you. We are going through House of the Dragon right now on our bonus show for our Sif Pop members. If you're interested in that, we talked about episode 8 this week, and we'll continue to talk about that as the season finishes out. There are, of course, other things we talk about, other bonuses, other fun stuff you can check out at patreon.com/siftpop. Underneath it all is this amazing generosity from those who listen to the podcast, watch the video, go to the website to say, hey, I like what's going on in the world of Sif Pop, and I want to send $3 a month your way. That's amazing. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but it means the world to us. So thank you for doing that. That's at patreon.com/siftpop. All right, let's move into the best ever challenge. We're doing best ever Jamie Lee Curtis movies.
Yeah.
We will go from number 5 to number 1. And if you have it higher, you're always free to. Yes, exactly. Just like that. All right, so Andrew, kick us off. What is your number 5 Jamie Lee Curtis movie?
My number 5 Jamie Lee Curtis movie is a movie she isn't even credited in.
Really?
Escape from New York.
Yeah. I had that in my honorable mentions.
I guess I should say this before I get into this review. Jamie Lee Curtis is the Scream Queen. She's in a lot of Scream Queen movies. That's not my cup of tea. So right. I will say that I kind of had to stretch, to pick movies of hers that I actually really liked. Nice. So if you don't want to count Escape from New York, I get it.
No, count it. I had it in my honorable mentions. It's legit. Okay. She was in that movie.
Yeah, she's the narrator at the very beginning. I love this movie. It's so much fun. This is the type of John Carpenter movie that I think is a lot more accessible for people.
Mm-hmm.
This and They Live, you know, they're movies that have, you know, a little bit of light to them. It's not like The Thing, where it's the most terrifying movie you've ever seen in your entire life.
Yeah.
But no, I think Snake Plissken is a really interesting character, turning New York into a Manhattan into a prison, and the president crash lands as Air Force One, and you have to send in a snake. You know, his name isn't called Snake Plissken, you know, just because it's a cool name. It actually means something. You're sending a snake into the snake den, and to do the. It's a really fun movie. I really enjoyed it. Isaac Hayes is the Duke. He's great.
Nice. Yeah, like I said, I had an honorable mention. It's a fun watch. Something you might want to check out if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, your number 5.
My number 5 is True Lies.
Trump.
All right, we'll talk about it later. All right, what is your number 4, Andrew?
I'm gonna go with The Fish Called Wanda. Trump. Yep. All right, we're just gonna go back and forth, my friend.
Yeah, we are. My number 4 is the original Halloween, 1978.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, earlier in the show you said something about hating this franchise. I think it's a little extreme for me. I think the original movie is actually a good film. Like, Carpenter does some really interesting stuff in that movie that we forget now because so much of it has become retread and genre bait and all those kind of things. But there's a menace to that original movie that is not just simply about the violence. It is about this idea of evil always stalking, and you can see why that triggered such a genre. You know, I was going to say a franchise, but a genre. You know, really kind of
it really did
an entire genre because it's really well done. So. Shout out the original 1978 Halloween. If you haven't seen it, it's almost, it has gotten to that point where it's not just required horror viewing, it's required film viewing. It is, you know, one of the classics. So yeah, Halloween 1978 is my number 4.
Oh yeah, this is definitely a movie that you would expect to see in a film class.
Yeah, for sure. What is your number 3?
3? Yep.
Yeah.
This is where I have True Lies.
Nice.
What a fun movie. This is just such a fun movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's peak Arnold. It's you know, it's him and Tom Arnold.
Mm-hmm.
Arnold and Arnold. James Cameron. This is probably his most, that I can think of, lighthearted and goofy movie.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No, it's great. It's an amazing villain. Jamie Lee Curtis. The chemistry between Arnold and Jamie Lee Curtis is just Pontiac perfection. And you gotta love the Bill Paxton character in this as well. Mm-hmm. He's that whole side quest that Arnold has to go on with him is just so great. It's I think the closest that I can think of that James Cameron has come to making a comedy. I don't even. Yeah. Would you count this as a comedy?
It's certainly comedic. I would count it more as if we're playing genre math, I would count it more as action, but it is definitely comedic. So yeah, this is just a fun movie. It's just fun. I had it at number 5. It's just fun. It's it certainly bears some of the weight of the time it was made. But it is absolutely a blast to watch from start to finish. So yeah, True Lies. Somebody in the chat, Polly, recently heard a debate: is True Lies a parody or not? I don't think so. I think a parody kind of goes that next step of, you know, winking at the camera, and I don't think True Lies winks at the camera. I think it winks at the audience, and I know that sounds very similar, but there's a difference there. You know, I think True Lies understands what it's doing to the audience, and it is purposefully playing that in big ways. But it never gets to the point where it's like, you know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, see, you know, what we're making fun of here. It's just like we're being the apex version of this kind of movie. So Yeah. It's a lot of fun. True Lies, a lot of fun.
Yeah, good pick.
All right, so that was your 3 and
your
my
number
5,
3.
and now we're gonna go with my 3 and your 4. I had A Fish Called Wanda at number 3.
Very good.
This is also a really fun movie. This is a comedy, and as you can see, a couple members of Python in there, as well as one of, I think, the most underrated comedic actors ever. Which would be Kevin Kline. I think he is so funny, and he is so funny in this. And Jamie Lee Curtis is really funny in this as well. This is a great comedy. One I would, again, I think bear some of the weight of the time it was made, but it is a lot of fun to watch. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Kevin Kline got an Oscar nomination for this movie.
He did. Sure. Yes, he did. I guess
or did he win? I think he won.
At that point, it would have been... At that point, it would have been difficult to sell the idea that he is one of the most underrated comedic actors, because at that point, he was properly rated. But he has come to be underrated, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally agree.
So,
Absolutely adore this movie. It is like, even though it has, members of Monty Python, it does feel like an American Monty Python movie. I think that Kevin Kline, and Jamie Lee Curtis, they understood that type of comedy, and it works with these guys. So great movie.
There you go.
Your number 3 or your number 2?
I think we're on to your number 2.
My number 2?
Yep.
Well, my number 2 is your number 1. It's Knives Out. So
okay. Well, then I'll do that. And then we'll see if my number 2 is your number 1. My number 2 is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yep, hit the button.
So we swapped them. Who do we want to talk about? I think technically we should talk about yours first then, right?
Okay.
So you had Everything Everywhere All at Once at number 1. I had it at number 2.
Nice.
Talk about this movie. Fairly recent.
Yeah, it's still my number 1 movie of the year. It is in my top 100 movies of all time. I just rewatched it last week or the week before, and I am just to this day blown away by how unbelievably unique this movie is. To tackle so many different, subjects like family, relationships within the family, and it does it with so much respect, even though this is a movie where people fight with butt plug trophies and try and swing dogs like a mace. It's but everything is done. This movie shouldn't work, and it's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen.
I think that's fair. Yeah, it does. It feels like such a big swing that you're like, well, certainly you're not going to make contact with this big of swing. You're swinging way too hard. Yeah, you're basically closing your eyes and swinging hard. There's no way you're going to hit it, and the movie hits it. It hits it out of the park. So, and when you make contact with this big of a swing, it's going to go far. And sorry to stretch the baseball metaphor so thin, but it is really, really good. And I need to revisit it. I probably will revisit it here very, very soon in detail and take a deeper look, because I just remember being floored, not just by how visually stunning it was, but by how meaningful it was, and the things it had to say about what love is, and each of the journeys into the different realities here says something new about our relationship to each other, and it's really astonishing stuff. So well done.
Michelle Yeoh is brilliant. So is Q Kwan.
Yep. Yeah, and Jamie Lee Curtis.
And Jamie Lee Curtis is good too.
All right, we'll talk about my number 1, which is your number 2, and that is Knives Out, which I guess maybe in hindsight they will title Knives Out a Knives Out mystery. I don't know. Sorry.
Do you mind going really quick? What do you think of that title?
I hate it. It should just be Glass Onion. It should just be Glass Onion. People are smart enough to get it. That is a marketer's decision. I hate it. Even if it had been a Benoit Blanc mystery, I would have been a little bit better. But Glass Onion is not a Knives Out mystery. Knives Out was a completely different story. Like it is simply the people in, and I tweeted this when they were talking about making a new one. If you put Knives Out anywhere in your title, you have failed. Period. End of sentence. That is a marketing decision. That is not a story decision. That is not trusting your audience to get it. Rant over. We can move on to talking about how.
So even if they called it Knives Out too, you wouldn't like it.
Oh, that would be the worst. That's the worst possible scenario, in my opinion. Wow. But I just Glass Onion. Glass Onion. That's the name of the movie. Knives Out, Glass Onion, whatever the next Benoit Blanc is, it'll be called that. Anyhow, let's talk about how amazing this movie is. It is an intricate murder mystery, which in and of itself is not always easy to do, but this movie pulls it off. Performances are stunning. Every player is a fully drawn character in the mystery, has their own possible motives, their own interconnections to the other characters. Love the Benoit Blanc character. It is that perfect aw shucks, foghorn, leghorn kind of,
It's so ridiculous.
It really is. Add to that, it's a beautiful, beautiful twist of a murder. And, just the actual resolution is really interesting and fascinating. So, yeah, I love, love, love Knives Out and enjoy it on multiple levels. I mean, it's also a beautiful exploration of, white privilege and, the idea of wealth and how that impacts the way we see the world. So... yeah, I adore this movie.
As you should. It is brilliant. And it's unfortunate that Glass Onion will not be good.
Why?
Well, because Rian Johnson makes one good movie every other movie.
Oh, I see what you're doing here. We're going to break that cycle. Just for you, Andrew. That cycle will break.
As much as I love Daniel Craig's Benoit Blanc in this movie, easily for me, Marta is she stole the movie for me.
Sure.
The character is just so pure to the point where if she lies, she throws up, which again is something so ridiculous, but these people make it work. I think this is the best Clue movie ever made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would not argue with that.
Yeah.
There you go. There's our best ever Jamie Lee Curtis movies. I had a couple of honorable mentions just to throw out there. I would say My Girl is worth mentioning. And Trading Places is also one, if you haven't seen, you should see. Really funny.
You mean Freaky Friday?
I do like Freaky Friday. I probably should have
put yeah, she was in Trading Places too.
Yeah, she was in Trading Places as well. All right, let's move on to our buried treasure. What is that thing in any area of pop culture that you want to make sure people know about, Andrew?
I have a feeling that you and I have the same buried treasure, so I brought a backup just in case.
Not a chance.
Is yours
There's not a chance you have the same buried treasure that I do.
Is yours a Netflix show?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I did not expect that. I'm going to go with The Mole.
Oh, I love The Mole. I haven't watched the new season. There's just so much TV to watch. Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the new season?
There's 2 episodes left. They're doing kind of what they do in The Circle, where they stagger the last 3 episodes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Aaron, you are going to love it.
Great.
I mean,
Great.
absolutely love it. Yeah. It's interesting because, with the first iteration of The Mole, after that first season, it's like, yeah, you can't do that again. So it's interesting to see how they've taken the concept of the mole, somebody who's working against the group, and it's so well done in this because I from the first episode, I'm sticking with who I think is the mole, and I'm going to stick with it throughout the whole thing. But I'll tell you, it's interesting to see the different types of players that are in this show, because it's not just people who are playing and then the mole. There's the mole, and then there's people who are playing to win the money, and then there's people who are playing to win the game. And that's very interesting because people are realizing it's beneficial for people to think I'm the mole. And if you're more interested in winning the game and not how much money goes into the pot, then you can play the game totally different if you just want the title of I won the mole.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you are gonna. I would be so interested once, whenever you watch it, to if you were to let me know who you think is the mole moving forward. So.
Yeah, I just have not gotten around to it yet. This show holds a special place in my heart. I really loved the first season of The Mole back in the day when it came out, which was right around when reality television broke. Like, it's right around that Survivor Big Brother era, Amazing Race, when those started. And
2001.
And an unknown Anderson Cooper was the host of season 1 and did a fine job. Maybe even season 2, but then it went into like Celebrity the Mole, and it kind of lost its way. Then they did a revival, and I think I've talked about before, I actually was almost cast on that revival. I made it to the final cast cuts on the Mole casting for the revival that happened back like 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of disappeared, and then I heard Netflix was bringing it back, and I was like, oh, I'm curious. So I've had such a weird relationship with the show that it's just kind of one of those things. I know I'll get around to it eventually, but I love the concept. I think the concept is really, really fun. So yeah, I will check it out for sure.
I truly think that, knowing how you felt about the first season and how I felt about the first season back in the day, I think you are going to be really happy with the way they've handled this.
Good. That makes me happy. I hope it kind of refines some of that life, because when they did the celebrity versions, they completely lost what made the show good.
Yeah. No, I think that this show not only understands, but it executes it very well.
Yeah.
And you?
My buried treasure is on Amazon Prime. It is a show called Outer Range.
Outer Range.
Not Open Range. Outer Range. Have you watched this, Andrew?
Just the pilot.
Just the first episode?
Yeah.
So Outer Range is the story of the Abbott family. Josh Brolin is kind of our main character here. And he, I guess, I don't think it's much of a spoiler because it's right there at the beginning. It's probably in the promotional material. But he finds a big hole in his property, or is aware of a big hole in his property. And the exploration of the mystery of this hole and what it is and what it means. Is it science fiction? Is it, outer space? Is all that kind of stuff is not only compelling to me, but also interesting to me how quickly the show answers questions, which I was not expecting so many questions answered in the first season. But it really goes to some places. Some of them I figured out, some of them I did not, but it's a real thinker of a show where it's like, wow, what is going on here? Imogen Poots is incredible in this as a character named Autumn. Lewis Pullman is one of the Abbott boys. I love Lewis Pullman. I've enjoyed his stuff ever since. The Bad Times at the El Royale.
He was so good in that movie.
So good in that movie.
The bellhop, and he's great, and he's great in Top Gun Maverick too.
Correct. And Will Patton, who we saw in establishing I don't know what kind of relationship with Laurie Strode in Halloween, is also in this. And it's a lot of fun to kind of think about what is going on here, and the performances are good. The first season goes to some interesting places. I'm excited to see where it goes from here. And so I finally got around to watching the first season of Outer Range, and it is a big recommend from me.
Well, good.
So, yeah.
Like I said, I've only seen the pilot. What are there, 8 or so episodes?
I don't remember. I know it's in that range, 8 to 10.
Okay.
In that range. See what happens there. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it is 8. Okay. So it's not a long watch, but I think it's a valuable one. It's worth it. So.
It's Josh Brolin. That's why I watched the pilot. But we talked about, I don't know if we talked about this in the show proper or not, but just being so overwhelmed with the amount of television that's out there right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm playing some catch up right now and enjoying it.
So, I haven't even seen this new season of Rick and Morty yet, so
yeah,
it's crazy.
That is Outer Range on Amazon Prime, and The Mole makes its return on Netflix. Are they just calling it? Are they saying it's
just,
season
The Mole,
4, or it's just The Mole?
Yeah.
So interesting. I wonder if it's technically a different show, or if it's sorted with the others.
I mean, it's the fingerprint is the logo again, so I'm pretty sure it's the same.
Okay, there you
the
go.
Old one.
Well, congratulations. We did a podcast,
Woo!
Andrew. We figured out who the mole was, and we kicked him off this week. So it's just Andrew and I.
Yeah. That's what happened.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for joining us today for Sif Pop. It is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. If you want to know more about other shows on the network, go to studiodna.media, or you can search Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out with me again today.
Thank you, buddy.
Big thanks to producer Phil for producing the audio and video show.
Thanks, Phil.
And much love and gratitude to our Sif Pop members for giving monthly to make Sif Pop a real thing. Support starts at $3 a month, and some fun bonus stuff for you there at patreon.com/SifPop. Lots of ways to connect with the podcast. You can leave a comment, a rating, or a review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. You can email us at feedback@sifpop.com if you'd like to send an email. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like the show too, so let them know about it, and that listening is much easier than trusting your crush in the Halloween franchise. We will be back.
You.
We will be back next week with Black Adam, I think, as well as another film to review. So we will see you then.
I got my Dr. Fate helmet ready for next week.
Nice. Well, we will go with it. Thanks to the live chat.
Yeah.
Nice to see you guys popping in and commenting. Polly commenting throughout, agreeing that it is Marta's movie, and yes, it absolutely is. Llama says, I didn't even hear that they did that to the title. Glass Onion, a Benoit Blanc mystery works, but I get it. It's a gamble to expect audiences to remember a new name like that. I don't get it. Audiences are smarter than that. You can even put it in like the first sentence of the description if you want, like, fresh off the, the Knives Out, Benoit Blanc comes back or something. I don't know, but it's just, marketing. It's marketing. Nicholas mentions that Glass Onion is going to be in theaters over Thanksgiving, and that's pretty cool. Netflix hasn't done anything like this before. They've had their movies come.
Oh, go ahead.
They've had their movies come out in specific art house theaters and different things like that. They've never gone wide for a week like this. Every theater is going to have Glass. Yeah. It's going to be wide in most theater chains for 1 week.
That's interesting.
I
knew that they have to, for awards consideration, they have to have a limited run at least in theaters. But I never realized that they hadn't gone mainstream.
Yep.
That's fascinating.
Jay Bourgeois said, I didn't realize how few Jamie Lee Curtis movies I'd seen until this week, just enough to make a top 5. Knives, Everything Everywhere, Halloween, Freaky Friday, and Christmas with the Cranks, which we did not mention. For sure. Gonk says, does it really feel like a final chapter? It does, but it definitely, I think, leaves the door open for some shenanigans.
I mean, it's cowards. They're just cowards. Commit.
Yeah.
Commit.
There's like Mark and Computer Geek. Nice to see you as well. That's going to wrap it up for the video part as well. We will catch you guys next weekend. We'll see you then.
Yep. Bye.